Perfect. All right, how's your week, Pete?
It was really good. I actually I had probably the fewest trades I've had all year, but just a really good week. It was mostly just I shorted Tesla a few times, and then Enphase just was really locked in. Caught some huge moves both directions on that. Just 500, 700% on some option contracts. So I just kind of let those ride and just didn't overtrade after that. And so yeah, so really good for me.
Yeah, yeah, good. I'm glad you had a light week. That's kind of important, probably this time of year, and just in general, occasionally to take a little break. And I don't know a better time than around the holidays to, free up a little time and not trade as much. For me, it was about 55. Didn't really get to 60 down there. Um, so uh, um, I tried looking at charts. I think the first day, and I was like, this is not. It's not perfect conditions. I kind of equate it to when you were. I think you had. What'd you have? You're on some pain medication though. That's all I remember. And you're like, I'm not giving advice when I'm on pain medication. um,
Yeah, right, right.
so I equate Vegas to pain medication. I'm just not gonna give advice when I'm in Vegas. So, um, but it seemed that I guess it seemed from a very distant angle, it was kind of violently sideways last week, as you would put it. It seemed tradable, but you had to be you almost had to be a scalper last week.
Yeah, here's how I would describe it. So, I go into a day, some tech stock has like Snow or somebody has bullish flow going into the day. Then it gets caught up in a pretty significant move down in SPY and QQQ, has this big morning flush, and then it starts to cover and grind up. So anyone who chased puts did not do well. Anyone who was impatient with calls didn't do well either. So you pretty much, if you wanted to trade, you had to have a pullback level in mind and catch the reversal off that, or you had to just be looking to the downside and be really quick, at open, and that's pretty much how what the story was for a lot of major tech stocks. Of course, the biggest story was just Tesla's continued weakness. People trying to talk about how cheap it is, and then it goes down another 8-10%. So, um, just a disaster there. Has repercussions for a lot of stuff that we watch in the EV space with chargers and some of the smaller names too.
Yeah, just looking at Spy last week, I mean, it kind of looked like it tried to get up midweek, and I don't know why Thursday, but Thursday was a nightmare. it was
Yeah, yeah, it
it,
was.
it was so cold outside, so I don't know. But the Spy on the weekly, that's a horrible downward doji. Looks like we do have some more downward side. We hit our downside target, that 373 on your end and 372 on my end. We kind of mirrored each other last week on these numbers. But the top
Yeah,
side, we were 395, and we never really got up above what, 387. Um, so not that's not a
right.
miss. That's not necessarily a miss because we're real close on that window, and we didn't have to give you four levels to each side every day to do that. Um,
Right. Well, yeah, and I think the trajectory we both sort of had the take that we could get a little spike to the upside, but
yeah.
that the Santa rally wasn't really going to materialize,
Do you
and
see this
it,
as
it
if,
didn't.
because I mean you're more of a big picture guy than me by far. You get mechanics better. Do you see this like totally being on Tesla here? They're that big of a name that they're kind of holding this down from a little bit of not necessarily rally, but just more of a relief in the chart.
I think it's that, and they didn't rescue Apple to the extent that they normally do. So, when when Apple broke under 140 and then 135 and then kind of didn't come back. A lot of times if we're gonna have like true sideways, your definition, it's Apple that sort of props things up, and Microsoft and a few others. And then really the only thing that kept the market from just a like full on plummet last week was the strength that you still have in some of the Dow stocks like BA and CAD and J&J, and some of the those risk off um, industrials kind of kept things from just completely falling off. But yeah, I mean Tesla definitely is the most aggressive charge down, but at the same time, as its market cap shrinks, its impact is less too.
Yep.
But I think its impact in terms of perception is still really high.
Yeah, it's I mean that's probably more for just general conversation, but um the man, were we early on Tesla falling? But if you were to
Yes.
ask us like at that point in time, and I'll put what I put out there in general, um, like where it's gonna end up, like we would have totally bought that at 150, right? Like when we first started
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about it. But as the ball falls and the season changes on it and it keeps going, you get more news and you kind of see the situation as the play develops. That's probably the best way to put that. Um, there's definitely more downside there, and I'm not gonna probably mention too much, but I seen you even talk about the 100 level kind of coming into play here real soon. Um,
Yeah. It's what there's a distinction. So there's with out of the money flow, there's a lot of ways that they do it. They're playing purely volatility, those old like Rev 35C kind of crazy things. Do that with the meme stocks too. But when it's plausible that it's going to hit that strike, you can kind of see that taking shape, just because of the way that they scale into those orders, the way the multi-leg orders take shape. You kind of get a feel for that. And so there was a time when really Tesla like 130, 140 was sort of as far as they're wanting to push that. And but now 100p does stand out as plausible. It doesn't mean it's going to get there, but yeah, for me, if I had been wanting to scale into Tesla, I would have done like 160 to 150 with the idea that worst case it's going to go to 120. Obviously we're there now,
mhm.
so I don't think we're just sort of magically at the bottom. And yeah, I'm with you that there's definitely some more downside here. And one way I look at it, if investors want to look at Tesla as a car company, it's got a long way to fall.
Yes.
They have, obviously there's some brand damage with the Twitter thing, but just even in terms of fundamentals compared to other car companies, they're still way overvalued. So they have to reset things, and robots or whatever, however they want to brand themselves. They need some new stuff, and they need it pretty quick, I think.
Well, in general, the EV was being held up by the hope. It was like the last thing that hope still could be in a stock price. You know, the future could still be in the stock price, especially with the Democratic in charge of the money right now. Like EV was still hopeful that hey, we can grow no matter the climate, especially with the
Yeah,
help they were
yeah,
pushing. So it was one of the last to fall. But Tesla's a lot like Meta, where the for Meta is the active users, right? Like as soon as those are like, hey, we're
yeah,
not growing, we're actually losing. That stock, all the hope came sucked right out of it. I mean, and that's what you're seeing with Tesla. As soon as the number of deliveries levels off or goes down, and they start for I know they're not, but it seems like they're running discounts. Um, that's gonna level off because you're losing that like full throttle 100% growth that you don't know where it's gonna end. You found the ending of it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the stocks are usually overextended from that point. And I mean Tesla's always been that way. We've just seen it to the upside for the last like 4 or 5 years, right? It's been overextended that way.
yeah, yeah,
I was people probably looked at me like as an idiot, and I said it like when it was at $1,200 just to keep people's head in the game. That hey, Tesla's like a $300 stock, and people would be like,
yeah, yeah,
I was just trying to be not realistic, but just so you knew what you were dealing with, because this has always been on the table. Um, But
Yeah.
I do think we're getting to a point to where you could comfortably say Tesla will, you know, 3, 4x in the next 5, 10 years. Easy. I mean, easy.
Oh yeah.
If
Yeah.
they do continue to develop as a company, um, but you have to. If you see them as a car company, I think you're 100% right. They're more of a data company if they're a money company, and that's in that full self drive stuff. I mean, that's really their game, in my opinion. Um, but short term, I don't know when. I still don't know when I'm buying. I don't know about you, but I'm not scaling into that yet.
Yeah, no, no, no. I think it's great. It's great on the option side. Just, I mean, mostly down right now, but it'll have some recoveries here and there, and just the yeah the reason okay the reason that options are so good on it, but is that obviously there's so many people in it, and I will say too though that the flow has a lot more clarity down here than it did back when it was at $1,200,
Yeah.
and that was like trading SPY back then, but it's much more tradable now. The intraday flow, gives you some hints and things. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I've enjoyed trading that a lot, and it's I do see some more downside though, like we said.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful for more downside because I'm really trying to pick up a couple hundred shares and sell covered calls against it after I get in the money. I mean, that's my plan.
Yeah,
At
and
this
I
point,
anywhere from $80 to $90
yeah,
would be a great zone for that if we
that's
get there. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. I mean, it's more of a long term thing, but selling calls on that, especially when you're in a position that you're just going to manage long term, seems
yeah,
very profitable. Better than Visa.
yeah, absolutely. I actually started getting into sold calls on a couple mid caps just because it's like, okay, I can get 100 shares, and the shares are 12, $15. So anyone getting into selling calls, I mean, I've been at this a while, but that's a different side of it. And if you can do that with a small cap or mid cap, just to see how it works, it really helps. And I paper trade at all. It just doesn't put me in the right mindset to do it. I mean, some people like it, but when you actually have a real position, real life that you're managing, those selling calls and seeing how that works is definitely something that can work in your favor.
I do it all the. I mean, not lately, but I used to do that all the time, especially on those smaller cap options. I remember the last one that was good was Mullen, in the first
Yeah,
run up. It was a dollar call and you got 90 cents for it at 90 cents. It was
yeah,
like for free. It was dumb, but a lot of those I used to play, but I can't sit in positions long enough, and it's real hard to go cover your call and then worry about your shares. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
always like to do that in a more like I'm gonna hold this for 6 or 7 months and I'm up in the position type thing. Um,
Right.
so market depending, but yeah, that's if you're a long term investor and you're sitting on stuff. I don't know how you like, especially right now as it's falling, because there's little risks that are gonna get exercised. I don't know how you didn't sell cover calls against your stuff. Um,
Yeah, I mean, imagine if, like, even if you were AMC ape and real believer in that
yeah,
all the way down, if you had a ton of shares, I mean, you could really help yourself out a lot just selling calls on it. And but a lot of them aren't big believers in options,
yeah,
but yeah, but that's the kind of situation where it could work.
yeah. Goose was talking about Roaring Kitty doing that, making like 50, 100K a
Yeah,
month just on his shares of GME by selling
right. Yeah,
covered calls, and like deep in the money covered calls too, like not even close to being exercised covered calls. Um,
right, right.
that's a whole nother topic because I was about to say like it's opposite of in the money on the covered calls. You don't want to get in the money as opposed to
Yeah, yeah.
how you play options, right? You want to be in the money. Um, so spy this week. Let's wrap all the way around there since we took a ride in an electric vehicle there for a minute. What do you got on SPY this week? Because I'm gonna probably pretty much just be talking out my ass. So I'll go with you first.
Well, I think kind of the level of interest here is at around like 378, which I think matches up to this number from this JP Morgan collar that we talked about. Like, yeah, it's like 3780, I think is the number that stands out. So anyway, I think we're pretty close to that. We're going to break below that, I think. And I'm looking at like 370 is kind of my bottom number for this week. I don't really see a lot of upside. I could be wrong on this, but I'm going to say like 385 is probably the top that I think we'll see this week.
Okay, so you took some whole numbers there. I'm gonna go with this line I have on the chart. It's real close to what you said, and it kind of Bob Barkers you here. It's 370, 370.93, so I'm gonna go 371. Um, I don't want to take this number, but I want to definitely mention it here. But this 395, um, it's like the last 2 months, pretty much center mass. So I think that's going to be the place to play any kind of rejection, in my opinion. If not, puts are probably risky because you're going to get that morning thing we always talk about, right? Where it dives off in the morning and then comes back and whatnot. Top side though, man, I wanna go. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna go 391. I'm gonna go $6 above you there. I think I really think we finish the year strong like we normally do. I'm hoping they don't take that away from us.
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
yeah. I
that's
mean, if there's some selling momentum carried over from the weekend, we'll see where that goes. But if the sell off, if they kind of overdo it early in the week, then that bounce back to rip into the end of the year,
yeah.
could be significant. So yeah, so a lot of it, I might be right with you if I start to see that kind of that flow momentum turn things around. Because there are actually a couple good setups we're going to talk about in the next segment that hint at some potential for the week
Yeah,
too.
yeah. My theory has always been, well, first it's kind of like a poker, right? Or musical chairs. Like you kind of want to be, you want to be first, but you don't want to be real early. But rich people don't want to carry cash at the end of the year, right? They want to have assets. Um,
Yeah.
and that's it. That's it. Simple. That's just how I
What's
see it.
what's your take on tax loss harvesting?
Oh, you done seen that the whole month. Are you doing that?
Yeah.
You got any? I got a couple I'm getting rid of.
No, no.
I got a couple I'm getting rid of. Um, yeah. Yeah.
But
No,
yeah, but what you
it
said, I
it
think, is a key
happens.
that people started that already. It's not like this week is just gonna, just
So
everyone's
those
gonna do it all at
yeah.
once.
So those bigger firms, like the big guys that have large positions, and I talk about it. I kind of mention it occasionally when I think it's going to be huge. But they move out of positions like on a monthly, in and out of positions on a monthly basis, and
Yeah,
it's totally like a math problem, like keeping this as opposed to what we can gain as opposed to what the tax burden is, and it's a big ass math problem. How many shares of this do we buy and or sell every month? Like it's all part of the game. So at the end of the year, that's just kind of magnified because it's the end of the year. It's the last chance you get. If they need to come up with some more losses, they find them. Like that's not hard for them. They don't want to pay taxes, right? So you get I think you
yeah,
get that a lot towards the end of the year, and that's where the Santa rally comes from. Is because people dump some things they don't want, kind of gives you the little trickle down, and then they start buying because they have to refill that position in their portfolio. And I kind of think that's where the Santa rally comes from, to be honest with you. It's not that people are buying stocks for Christmas presents.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and I'm just hopeful that that's still a thing, right? Like just from a big money perspective, like that they still have to hold something, and they've just been waiting for I don't know why, I don't know. Energy. Let's hop into that. I'm hoping it's
Oh
not
yeah.
gas. I'm
So
hoping it's not gas because gas prices are finally flipping reasonable out here.
yeah. So the one thing I'll say, I talked for a couple weeks about how there was there was a divergence in
Yeah.
oil, like oil prices, like in futures, CL1 exclamation point, all that, and that the stocks were still we're still pretty high. We hadn't seen a big pullback there, and the way that that kind of resolved itself is actually best seen not really in Oxy, because Oxy has a ton of protection from Buffett right now, but in Devon. So if you look at the week that Devon had, it for the past most of December, it had been selling off, and it sort of pulled back a bit to what CL1 was doing, which it had dipped down to 72. But now, as oil futures have recovered and we're back up to 80, we have a lot of potential here, I think, to get to like that 84 to 88 number. And that's if that happens, that's going to give stocks like Devon and MRO a lot of room. Uh, Exxon is kind of bumping up against the resistance, but you could definitely see that go to 110 if it were to break through that. Could just shoot on that. But yeah, so like Devon, I look at that and I look at the flow on it. That 65 to 68 flow is kind of a point of interest for me. So oil, I'm kind of tentatively bullish on it and think that it has an opportunity this week to to check in at some of those previous levels after this pullback. So we got the pullback I was looking for. Now we see the reversal, and for the past year, that has worked exceptionally well with oil, where they buy up the dips on it. So until that situation changes, that's my strategy for oil. I don't really play puts on it. I just wait, and now we're kind of on the flip side. So oil futures definitely something to watch this week. Natural gas is kind of a little bit more volatile with the up and down moves. But yeah, I'm interested for your take on oil first of all.
I I had a question before I'm going to give you my take. Sorry, I was in
Yeah,
Vegas
sure,
last.
sure.
I was in
Yeah,
Vegas
that's fine.
last week. How much of that? Do you know how much the strategic oil reserve we filled back up? Have you looked at that at all?
I don't have a number on how much we did, but I know that Biden did actually really well on that whole when he sold and when he bought. I know
Okay.
we got a pretty good spot on it.
Um, I'm not too worried about oil till about like 85, and then I think um that's when the charts get going. But if you see the charts going to if you see oil like trending that way, I definitely think now's the time to get on them. I got Devon up on screen. It's right on a support. That's a free one. Merry Christmas, people out there that don't follow
Yeah,
us. Um, yeah, so I like them, and your baby's really close too. It's just on. It's just not quite
yeah,
to my level. I think my level's like 53 or 56. I'm not sure. Without looking at it, I guess I can just pull that one up. But I do think. I mean, like, I do think we're gonna. I don't know about 100 again, but I do think
yeah,
higher
yeah,
higher oil 56. Sorry, 56. Um, I do think higher oil prices are in the future, and this is kind of where I was not last year. I wish I was because I would have been on the same page as you. But the year before, because we had the Biden saying, I'm going to open up on the 4th of July. So I was like, hey, I've been using gas for 2 years. we're going to be using gas again. So going into the summer, that's always a thing, right? More fuel. Um,
Yeah.
but you start looking at that stuff now in January, February. So I definitely I don't think we're staying in the 70s, but I don't know about the hundreds ever again. If these stocks are going to be profitable with oil in the low 90s, um, we definitely should stay on them and play them. Um, for me,
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am, and so to me, the fact that these oil stocks didn't just give it all back with that huge pullback in oil prices, just to me signals a kind of new setup, new environment where they're not just going to retrace. They're not likely to retrace all the way down without something really significant, pushing them down there.
yeah, and I probably should use this time to say this because this is something we have been on for pretty much our entire existence, right? Like, if you got in our room, you heard Oxy day one. That's just how that went. Um,
Yeah,
but if you're on these stocks at this point in time, they've been in an environment where they've just made, like, let's just say if we throw a number on it, 4x profits last year, just because the price of oil is up. So they've generated not profits, revenue, sorry. They've generated 4 times the revenue for last year just because of the commodity they sell is up. Um, During that time, they've had to still run their business, and we've had 3 or 4 earnings. So, really, at this point, we should be dissecting those earnings to see who is making more money, more profit off more revenue, and not who's spending more money. Excuse me, spending more money or not making more money on more revenue, because that's what's important, because investors are going to see that the big fish, Warren Buffett's of the world, are going to say, hey, this company made more money, but they didn't make more profit. Like, when they made less money, they were more profitable from a percentage standpoint. And those companies their
yeah,
stock price isn't going to hold up because it's not going to interest investors. It's the ones that are making 4 times profit, or excuse me, 4 times revenue, and they 2x or 2.5x their profit. That's the oil companies you want to be interested in right now, because those stock prices will hold. Um, it's there's more than just the hope or high oil prices right now, and I think that's important in anything. Crypto, EV,
yeah,
whatever, that's going to happen in any market, right? When you get that initial euphoria, eventually the numbers come out, and you need to stick with the ones that have good numbers. It's the problem with the momentum trade. They never get to that level, right? They just want to trade the stock price and say, well, it was $200 last time. Well, that doesn't matter if it's $200 last time. What matters is that they made 4 billion and they only profited 100 million. That's what's important.
yeah, exactly.
Um, and I think in oil, we have a good opportunity to kind of pick that apart right now. Because those are the charts that are going to continue. Those are the ones you should be buying off a higher low. Those are the ones that are going to last for more than, the 3 or 4 weeks that oil's in the news, which is what you did with Oxy last year. You found the one that was going to be the most resilient. Um, and it still has been. I mean, it's held its gains more.
Yeah, and that was pretty much that was really the first stock I'd say where I really sort of figured out how to read flow, and just seeing at the time it was in like it was like $28, and
Yeah.
just seeing these moves, it's like the 50-60 calls into the summer, really kind of clued me in on that.
Yeah, and like I mean, this Oxy, that's still 100% up from that level. Where Devon here, we're up, you know, 20, 25. In all reality. I mean,
Yeah,
we had a big move, which is what we look for as day traders. But from a stock perspective, like, it's kind of came back down to reality, right? It has. It's $12
right.
on there. That's not a bad year. Don't get me wrong, but it's because now we know the numbers. We know what they can do when you give them money, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of money, they're the alternate side of the universe, the old crypto scene. Um, Man, I feel early on that. Um, I don't know where you are. I pretty much just go down the FTX and Binance rabbit hole, and I'm just waiting for the shit show
Mm.
constantly. But interested in your take on that right now.
Yeah, I think as it there's just people with and risky leverage positions and things um, that are we're just waiting for it to come out. Like I think there are institutions and companies and brokers and stuff that are pretty much already screwed, but it just hasn't hit yet. So that's sort of what I'm waiting on. I don't think it's not going to be a bunch of fresh new scams and Ponzi's taking shape. It's just the ones that already happened that are going to come out after this. And yeah, and Binance just does not inspire confidence with the way they've been talking and addressing things. A lot of red flags there. So that's kind of what I'm looking to see fall, and that would be that'd be pretty significant.
Yeah, from the stock side, I don't see anything that's remotely viable to play. Um,
Yeah.
I tried to keep
Well,
it.
we caught that TR move down. It's at a spot where it's tough to short to
Yeah,
break under 150 to but that could be a I don't know $60-$70 stock or lower if things go bad. Um, but yeah, I'm with you on that. Coin, same. You talk about book value. What is the book value on coin?
it took 3 weeks, but he asked $29.
Yeah. Okay. So we're getting there. And flow is going to check down below that at about 25. So I think we do see that pretty soon.
I think that's one of our best approaches is when we get an approach to where you look at the short term and I look at the long term. I really think that's one of our best approaches, as opposed to vice versa, where I look at the short term and you look at the long term. Um,
Yeah.
I really think that's our best approach. Um, yeah, because
Yeah, and
it
that's
just usually works.
right. And when I kind of explain my whole take on coin, I actually I like coin. I like their app and just their approach and their legitimacy. I think compared to a lot of other of the stuff that's out there. But that doesn't mean that the stock should be $200. It's just that's just not reality in this environment. But I think they survive. And on the flip side of all this, when these stocks start to recover, if I buy coin at $25, $29, I'm not looking for it to just move to 32. I think it gets back into like 50s, 60s, something like that. It just kind of depends on what the crypto space does, but yeah, I think they'll make it, or someone will buy them.
don't
Same deal with Hood to
don't
me.
don't you have a $1 million position at 47 or better?
Yeah, right.
Was that you? Oh, that wasn't you. Oh, okay.
That was another
I
guru, right?
know. I know.
Yeah,
I know. I know. I know. Yeah, I just think again, I keep stuff super simple and it's just because it works for me. I don't like to overcomplicate things, but the best way I've heard crypto put is the people that have crypto need to sell it to keep their lifestyle up, the crypto bros. And there ain't no one buying
yeah,
crypto. There ain't no one buying crypto on that same scale. Like no one's like saying, "Hey, crypto looks safe. Let me put $100,000 in there, honey." Where these guys are like, "Hey, I need to pay this 50 racks and bills I got a month. So let me sell a coin.
yeah. And
Let me
the
sell a
big
coin."
the big Twitter joke that's kind of overdone is about the people who got their family into crypto.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some that Thanksgiving dinner is going to be awkward because you had them buy Bitcoin at 50,000 or whatever. But there was actually something to that where people were hearing about crypto and were like seeing people make all this money, and they're like, "Well, I'll buy some here," and they just get up their simple app and do it. It's really hard right now to get that crowd into it.
Oh,
The
agreed.
sentiment is just so bad
I agree.
that the average general public it doesn't have a lot of interest in this space right now, and
Yeah.
they're not people who get enthused about. Oh, I believe in the project or the utility or the community or any of that. Like They don't care about that. They
That's
just
my
want a fun little speculative asset, and right now it just doesn't look good.
that's my favorite part of crypto is because that stuff didn't really come into play until people said you can't spend this as money. So they had to find like something for it, right? They just had to. It's like a
Yeah,
middle ground usage until they can figure out how to actually use the technology. Yeah,
right, right.
I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but more downside. I think we agree there, and
Yeah.
we'll find our next what MSTR or somewhere in there. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, SI is one that it might look like, oh, I missed the boat on this short, but that one actually might go to zero because they're like front and center in this FTX crap. So
Jeez.
that's one to watch for the downside for sure.
All right. Well,
And Goose and I have been in some put leaps on it for a while, so it's been going well.
sweet. God, you guys and your crazy leaps. They always
Yeah,
pan out. They always pay. After that, I forget what was it. Bed Bath and Beyond, $35 or something.
yeah, yeah.
How do you make money off of that? Um, let's end of the year here. If there's anything you want to end the year with, well, I don't care what it is. Good time here. I'll start so you get an idea what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, good time for me. Like I kind of said at the beginning, clean up your stuff. If you ain't trading it, quit watching it. That's a big thing for me right now. Um, and understand like the market, the sectors that should be hot coming into the next year and the next quarter, and if you're gonna do some work, do it in those. I always say boring stocks. Um, yeah, they're not going to run 10x, but man, they're going to be safer and get you your compound gains you need. And learn a new skill. Like right now, that's always something I try to do beginning of the year. I don't like to have a resolution. Just try to focus on learning a new skill. But boring new skills. That's what I'm looking for into the new year.
Yeah, I think I think for me, it's always a good time to go back and really assess what worked for you this year and what didn't, and not necessarily to over attribute, like if things went bad in a certain kind of trade that oh, it was bad luck or the market just went against me here, whatever. I mean, that always can happen, but just in terms of how you managed it, like looking at your execution, your emotions, like just sort of assess all of that. And I mean, I'm a writer, English professor, so I always emphasize, I think, journaling and writing things down is really crucial. And I actually, I mean, I advocate writing things on paper and just having the paper next to you. Um, I can't really overestimate how important that is to me because everything's digital. You're all plugged in on digital everything, but just to just have something tangible that you can look at when all the charts are shut down and just think and assess has just been extraordinarily valuable to me as I've learned to do this. So that's my biggest takeaway from the year is just to really start to know yourself and find your strengths and capitalize on those.
I like that. Putting who you are into your trading. That's never a bad idea. It is real life, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, let's go on to the working session here.